Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another scary story time and Scary Stories in Wonderland. I'm Allison in Wonderland. I hope you all enjoyed my last two videos. After today's video, I will be making urban legend videos, so if you wish to hear a certain urban legend, comment on the video below. Also, here's a quick announcement before we get into the depth in today's video. If anyone would like me to do a face reveal, please put a yes and an explanation in the comment section of why you would like me to do it. I've had a few say they would like me to do a face reveal for a future video. In today's video, we have 3 stories about a demon, a childhood home, and a person named Marguerite. Hope you all enjoyed today's video. Now, on to the stories. The Demon of Old Cape Cod by Katie. My father rented houses for years after my parents' divorce. At one point, he settled into an old house built in 1763. On Cape Cod, there is an old highway called Route 6A, which holds many original colonial houses. To give some perspective, the oldest standing library in America is also on this road, as well as the oldest wooden jail in America. I remember the first time I visited the house. I immediately felt watched. Yet, there was nothing wrong or unusual about this house. In fact, it was beautiful. It had dark oak floors and bright white walls. Windows were abundant and flooded the house with natural light, but it was eerie and uncomfortable being there. My brother moved in with my dad and stepmom for a time. I remained at my mother's a few towns over. I visited when I could. On one of the first days of the new move, my brother told me that he sat alone in the house while our father went to run errands. All that was in the new house was a white couch in the front sitting room, and some other miscellaneous items like bureaus or chairs. Books filled the built-in bookcase that was also located in the sitting room. My brother sat at the kitchen island staring into nothingness. He wondered how to keep himself busy in the new house, but eventually changed spots to sit on the couch. As soon as he sat down, 3 clear and brief images appeared. The first was a woman, who he described to have jet black hair that was straight yet flowing, as if she was underwater. Her eyes were completely white and she was very pale. The second apparition was a man that had dark brown hair and was in a flannel shirt. He was drenched in blood and looked as if he were in pain. He was screaming, but no noise was coming out. The third apparition is lost in his memory. All he knows is that someone else appeared. After the visions, he tried to set aside the people that he had seen. He tried to move on and have a sense of normalcy, but the paranormal activity didn't end there for him. Unfortunately, it only got worse. He made his room in the second floor room to the left. It was pink, and the only thing that remained was a painting of a woman. She had dark brown hair and was in a black dress with a white collar. When I slept there, I needed to sleep in my brother's room with him. I would have a bedroom to myself that lay opposite of the stairs from his, but I couldn't stand it. I hated being alone there. It was the same feeling you'd get as if you were standing in a dark room and you knew there were people all around you, but you couldn't see them. I hated that feeling, and surely my brother hated it more, for what he had experienced was so vile and unsettling it chilled me to the bone to hear him mutter any word of it. I had my own experiences, and though few, they will forever haunt me. It started with insignificant things that could be easily brushed away. I would often shower in the master bedroom, but as I would pass through the bedroom, I wouldn't dare look into the far corners of the room. They seemed darker than the rest of the house. It seemed as though if you looked into these corners, someone would be standing there looking back at you. My worst experience happened to me when I was upstairs showering. It had a door with a keyhole that was unobstructed that made it easy to hear things out in the hallway. Wrapped in my towel, I wiped off the mirror. I began to hear slow, heavy footsteps creeping up the stairwell. I knew the rest of my family was downstairs, but I tried to assume it was my brother going back into his room. Why was he walking so slow, though? I stayed in the bathroom and listened to him. They stopped in front of the door. I had the overwhelming feeling that someone was standing right there. I could feel their overpowering presence. Silence followed, then suddenly a deep, elongated breath that sounded like what I can only describe as evil. It was in that moment I realized that there were only 2 inches of barrier between us. I knew he was pressed right against it, and he wanted to scare me. It worked. I swung open the door, forcefully imagining my brother standing there laughing at me. He wasn't there. No one was there. The house seemed unusually quiet for that moment. Many more instances followed, mostly insignificant but still unexplainable. My father and brother often noted that the cat Freddy would sit in front of the closet that lay inconveniently below the stairs. He would go into the closet and not leave for long spans of time. My dad told me he heard footsteps going upstairs as well. He said he heard them every night. As he lay sleeping in his room, which was next to the sitting room on the first floor, he would hear those old books being tossed to the ground. They were easy to hear, as the house lay still at night. All too often this would happen, and he would be replacing the fallen books back on the shelves in the morning. He tried to dismiss it, but there was no explanation for how they would fall off the shelf. An old painting of what looked to be an old sea captain was also left behind by the owners. When my father would walk by this painting, an unsettling feeling would fall over him. He later told me that he hid the painting in the attic because he was so frightened of it, and he didn't want to scare us kids. It stayed up there and was never seen again. My brother heard footsteps throughout the house. Doors were closing as well, but chalked it up to being an old house. It was an easy and reasonable explanation to him. While my brother and dad endured these experiences, neither seemed to know what the other had seen, heard, or felt, so they continued their day-to-day lives. The last time I was in that house, I can only remember the span of time when myself, my brother, and my dad sat at the kitchen island playing with the Ouija board. Now, I should tell you that though I realize it's easy to fake an Ouija board experience, as there were three of us playing it, that the stories that came out were too specific and detailed of any of it, of us as well, to make up on our own. The first story was about a woman. She birthed 9 children, but 4 had passed away before they reached the age of 10. She told us how sad she was about how she lost so many children. Ultimately, she died at sea. It was only until recently that I realized who this woman was. When my brother spoke of a vision of a woman whose hair looked as if she was underwater, I knew we encountered the same person. I asked myself, was she tied to the sea captain in the painting? My brother didn't remember the details of the Ouija board, but when I reminded him what had happened, he was in shock. He remembered the woman too, and it was coincidental to believe it was anyone but the same person. The next person to come through was a man in his 40s or so. He said he lived at the house with a son. When describing his son, he wrote out, "He is evil." We were all staring at each other in fright, and as soon as it started, it stopped. It was abrupt and was followed by a nearly long pause. Then the planchette picked up again and began to slide across the board. We all had a sinking feeling that came through and thought it was evil. I assumed it to be the son, but was proven wrong by my brother when I heard him say, "I can tell you it was a demon," only 10 years later. At the time, my brother asked, "Is this the present who was in my room?" The planchette moved yes. My brother and the presence exchanged a few more questions and answers, which were brief and uninformative. The last thing it said I will never forget. It was horrifying. "Come upstairs so I can show you the devil." The candlelight flickered wildly, and the sickening feeling of dread grew increasingly more visible in our faces. We said goodbye to the board, to the demon spirit, and I said goodbye to my house. Though I went there after that, the visits were few and far between, and I never slept in that house again. I had dreaded to think what could have happened after that night, after formally inviting the demon into the house. I was fortunate to not have to know, but my brother wasn't so lucky. Little did I know at the time there was a crawl space that runs from the inside of the house out to the main road. The closet that the cat would sit in front of was the entrance to the crawl space. There is a trapdoor within that closet that enters into the crawl space. My brother says that this is where the portal lies. The portal connects one realm to ours, a realm we may never understand or dare to venture into. My brother knew who came in and out of that portal and those who came through it, but never left. There was a demon who lived in his bedroom and tortured him. The demon spoke to us through the Ouija board. He said it came in the form of a shadow figure with red eyes. It would come nearly every night. He knew when it was there lurking by the sensation of something else being in the room. He would wake up to see it standing there. Then he said there was something that lived in his closet. It was unclear whether the shadow demon was the same entity as the one in the closet, but a demonic presence was very much apparent. My brother would often hear whispering voices coming into the closet. He could never make out what they were saying, but ticking, scratching sensation of it was too much to bear. Yet, he kept it to himself, loving in fear. Then they got worse. He would often hear his name being called out in different voices like mine and my sister's. It was imitating us, trying to lure him in. The evil son in the board, in fact, wasn't evil at all, my brother said. His name was Ben. He was a young teenager, and he was kind. He talked to him often. He was pleasant, and my brother wasn't afraid of him. Ben even followed them into late-night adventures at the cemetery up the road. He spoke to my brother and his friends in kindness, but after that fateful night where the demon unquestionably made his presence known, things began to change around the house. My brother told me of glasses breaking randomly. They would be sitting unbothered on his nightstand and just break. Tensions arose in the household as my brother became increasingly angrier. The environment became more volatile. When I asked him about the house, how he might explain the experiences in a few words, he said, "It was a weird blur. The house remains on Route 6A, and the owners have officially moved back in a few months after the final Ouija board experience. I wish the family the best because I can only dread to think what could have happened to them after that night after we welcomed the demon of Old Cape Cod." My Childhood Home by Jane Cameron. I lived in the same house from birth until I married at 19 and moved out. When I was 4, my bedroom was catty-cornered to my parents' room. One night, I saw something green and glowing in the crack of their open door. I screamed and they got up, and of course, they showed me that nothing was there. I knew what I had saw and I never forgot it. My mother didn't sell the house for years after my dad's death. I never saw anything else, but I never wanted to be on that second story alone. The bathroom was up there, last room on the right. I didn't ever talk about it with my brothers and sisters, but the second floor was just creepy. I always ran down the hall to get downstairs every time I had to go up there, and never stayed in my room to study, unless my sister was there too. When my mother got to be around 75, she sold the house and moved in with my brother. None of my siblings wanted the house, and it was a nice house. Anyways, one day my mom let it slip that the father of the family they had bought the house from had committed suicide by gun in the tub. Oddly, the tub was the most pleasurable place in the entire house to me, and go figure. It was one of those tall, claw-footed tubs that filled up to your chin, and I'd read in it for hours. The suicide news was freaky enough. But then I found out that the family she sold it to had 2 young sons and had been her neighbors while my father was still living. It had one child, which one of the children was terrified of the house. He said he didn't want to live there because my dad was still there. It wasn't my dad. I told her to tell him my dad would never hurt him, hoping to allay his fear. I know how he feels. If by chance my dad is there, he would never let anything bad happen to a child. My oldest brother died at 10 months, 2 years before I was born, and my dad treasured all of his children. That family moved 5 years after moving in, and I haven't seen the house since. Unlike a lot of people, I have no desire to revisit my childhood home. Marguerite by Jane Cameron. I had a ghostly experience when I was a senior in high school, and my friend and I skipped school one day. We went to a small Catholic cemetery overlooking a road where we could see traffic. but nobody could see us. After smoking and talking for a while, we decided to leave, and we couldn't find our car keys anywhere. We had only been on the bottom of the slope on a small hill, sitting on the marble gravestone of long dead priests. After spending about 30 minutes on our hands and knees, searching fruitlessly for the keys, I got up to stretch my legs and noticed at the top of the hill a small, ornate gazebo and decided to go look at it more closely. I walked up the hill and noticed it said Marguerite, who had apparently died at the age of 12 in the 1930s. I didn't notice the last name, but there was an angel statue in the center with a pointed roof and a stone railing around it. It was such a peaceful place, and I could tell she had been a much-loved child. I called for my friend to come look at it. So, as it was so unusual, as she walked up the hill toward it, I saw the car keys laying on the stone railing. We hadn't been anywhere near that area of the cemetery. Neither one of us felt frightened. It was like a child had played a trick on us. We left, relieved to be able to get home right after school was let out for the day. I had forgotten about it until years later when I was married and had an 8-year-old son. Another friend came over with her daughter and 2-year-old granddaughter. The little girl was thrilled with a pair of pink heart-shaped sunglasses she got for free with a kids' meal at one of the fast food chains. She wanted to go to the park so she could wear them. The park was crowded with older kids, so we decided to visit the little cemetery again. We walked up the hill. My son was holding the little girl's hand and walking about 10 feet in front of us, looking at the ancient tombstones of clergymen and women from the local parish. After a while, I noticed the little girl had taken off her sunglasses and was carrying them in one of her hands and holding my son's hand with her other hand. In a short time, she began crying, saying she had lost them. We looked around where we had been walking when I suddenly remembered the car keys incident. I told my friend about it, and we walked farther up the hill to Marguerite's gazebo. We hadn't got near it, yet there on the railing lay the sunglasses. My friend's daughter was terrified and insisted we leave immediately. I still felt like it was just child's play. Neither one of the children were afraid, and my friend felt peaceful, but we left to appease her daughter. Thinking about it later, I realized that I had never noticed Marguerite's surname, and didn't really care to go look. Who knows who it was? A child who didn't realize she had died? Or some trick of nature? I do know it really happened. I was raised in the Baptist church, and as a result of being threatened with hell every week of my childhood, I am not particularly interested in religion. Although I do believe in a higher power, I don't attend any type of religious experience. Just an accident that couldn't be explained. Hey everyone, thank you for watching the video. Go ahead and hit the subscribe and notification bell icon. Like and comment on the video if you want to hear a future story narrated on my channel. My email's in the description along with Patreon, Discord, and my Facebook page. I just made the Facebook page, so if everyone could give it some love and like it, that would be amazing. The link will be in the description. I hope you all enjoy.